Hello and welcome to Positive Fandom. I'm your host, Rrr Mmmm, and of course we have Stubble McShave with us. We're doing the final review for episode 8, which is the last episode for season 1 of the Wheel of Time. Stubble, how are you today?
Oh, I'm good. I'm good. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. And of course, as I said to you before, this is the day that I did not want to come because it means it's the end of season 1 for the Wheel of Time.
Yeah.
And I really enjoyed this series so much. And we both were discussing how, while it is true, everything that we wanted in the series was obviously, it's not possible to include everything. I enjoyed this immensely. How about you,
Yeah.
Sybil?
Oh, I liked a lot of it, but there were some things I didn't like about it. But in general, I think I'm kind of okay with it. I'm with the first season. I'm excited about season 2. What's coming? Because if you look at my favorite 20 moments in the season in the whole book series, I don't think any of them is from the first book. I'm looking forward to what's to come.
Yes, and of course, as we know, this book series is so extensive that there is much more to come, and we haven't even scratched the surface, have we?
No, it's well, they've incorporated a few things from the later books, but like the whole Aes Sedai water thing is not really present in the first book, and so yeah, I think it was to give it a cohesive feeling and introduce those elements earlier, and yeah. But this is not a reflection for the whole season. I think it's just for episode 8.
Yes, this is just for episode 8. We will do a season review episode at a later date after we've got a chance. What I want to do, Stubble, is I want to watch the season from episode 1 to episode 8
Yeah.
straight through, and then I'd like to do it like a season review wrap up of Wheel of Time and the things we liked, different things we would have liked to have had added in, and things like that. But today we're talking about episode 8, the conclusion for season 1. And just between you and I, while the episode was around 40 minutes, for me, I felt like the episode was too short. How did you feel about the length of the episode, Stubble?
Well, it was maybe a bit too short, but what I felt it was we really felt the COVID restrictions on the shooting for this one, especially on the battle scenes. They were not good, and they couldn't use 20 stuntmen as Trollocs as they did for the first episode, with all the makeup and all the people that have to be around them to make it work. So they have to do a lot of CGI and a lot of not so much hand-to-hand combat that I think was intended from the start. And we also felt the repercussions of one of the cast members leaving the show. And when you look at the scenes that Perrin had in this episode, I think you can see that most of those were intended for Matt, because you set up a lot of things with Matt that Perrin had to conclude in this, and it felt a bit off. It wasn't really his story because they set up everything with Matt in mind. The whole Paddan Fane thing was set up with Matt in mind, and Perrin had to be the one at the end, and it didn't really feel like it came off as it was intended from the start. But I'm jumping ahead here now, but there were some good moments as well, but I must say that this was one of the weaker episodes for me.
Yes, I felt the same as well. And for me, I immediately felt that it felt very compressed, meaning that they probably had a much longer episode, or intended to have a much longer episode initially. And unfortunately, they couldn't pull that off, and they had to make adjustments. And, it's unfortunate because I feel that this story really is one of the best, fantasy stories out there. It really
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
And, you know, unfortunately, we didn't get a chance to kind of get the benefit of it. But considering how difficult it is to have anything made today anyway, you know, we were kind of lucky for what we've gotten so far. And this episode, I think the way it starts off is an example of the compression that I'm referring to. I mean, we're kind of thrown into 3,000 years ago
Yeah.
between a male and a female Aes Sedai. It's very specific individuals. It's the Amarylline seat from 3,000 years ago, Latra Pose Decime, and she's talking to the dragon, who is Luz Theron Talamon. And honestly, this is like you're able to do time travel and go back in time and kind of see history, I guess, sort of repeating itself. What did you think of this opening scene, Stubble?
Yeah, it was another way of saying Back to the Future. You see the futuristic version of the history of the world, and I must say that the acting in this, the whole episode, I think, was really pretty good. And I must give a shout out to two of my countrymen, the one playing Lucerne and the one playing the bad guy at the end. I don't know what we should call him yet, but let's call. So yeah, and I like that we got to see the Age of Legends and got to see that there was like a very advanced society that was destroyed. But I wish we could have seen, you know, they look out the window and you see the flying vehicles and you see all of that. But I wish we could have seen that they were 10 years into a huge battle. They were in the end of a battle, and it felt like it was peacetime and they were just discussing things. But I appreciated that we got to see what was lost, so to speak, and we got to see the decision when it was made to seal away the Dark One in the Age of Legends, and it's Lucerne Talamon, the dragon, who is talking to let's see, what's her name? Latra Pose Dixcum, who was and it's not the Amelin, it's the Tamilin. You know, things change over time, so she was called the Tamilin.
I thought it was a typo, Stubble.
No.
So I was like, that can't be right. It's the Amarylline seat.
Yeah. And you notice that both have three names, and in the Age of Legends, it was that you get a first name and a surname. And then if you accomplish a great deed, you are awarded a third name. So both of these are prominent individuals who have served the community in such a way that they have earned a third name. But what did you think about the scene?
I loved it. Of course, I always want more. And there's nothing better than two people in a passionate discussion about something they care very, very much about. And this clearly was one of those discussions, a very important discussion, and quite a lot to just put to you, to let you know, one, it's 3,000 years ago, and two, it's perhaps one of the most important discussions in history, which they kind of joke around by saying that it takes place in a nursery, or this gets decided in a nursery. And what I thought was very interesting was how much Luz wanted Latra to bear the burden or to share the decision-making process with him. And this is no judgment on Latra at all, but she says, you know what, I can't make this decision. This is a decision you have to make. And I thought that was very interesting. He wanted both of them to confront what appeared to be the Dark One. And I had no idea. I mean, I guess I had interpreted the idea of this split as being something that's always been the way things have been. But we've known from the beginning that at some point there was this division that caused this split between men being able to bear the one power versus how they're not able to bear it now. And of course, one of the expectations of this novel for me, or at least let's say the series, is the hope that one day men will be able to bear the one power without having this detrimental side effect that kind of ruins a lot of stuff, because it'd be great to be able to do things together rather than kind of like it be the enemy in a way. This is something that's really caused an issue, a big issue, in addition to having to conquer the Dark One, in addition to having to worry about how you're going to conquer the Dark One. Now what should have been something that could have been a beautiful union between, male and female Aes Sedai is now turned into something bad. But the other very interesting thing I thought about was the fact that who is this baby?
Well, it's Luz Farren's baby, and but one of the themes of the whole series is that there's an inequality favoring the women in this world. The men are held back because of the taint or the corruption, as they call it in the and it's affected the whole society. And one of the themes is that you have to work together and you have to have an equal society. And it starts off, here we have the source. As we see the scene, they are on equal footing, but because of events that follows it, the male half of the power gets tainted, and that what follows through the thousands of years after creates the society that's skewed towards women, and it's never good that there should be an equal and working together, and so that's one of the major themes in the whole series.
And as far as I'm concerned, this is just my personal opinion, she never should have let him. I don't know what happened in his confrontation, and we get a sense of what might have happened when Luz confronted the Dark One. But as far as I'm concerned, if Luz confronted the Dark One alone, I think it's a failure. I think that Latra should have never, she should have had his back. This is how I feel. Like, just between you and I, what do you think? I mean, should she have had his back and did she have his back when he confronted the Dark One in this scenario?
Well, if she had, then maybe both male and female half of the power would be tainted. We don't know. So maybe the plan was faulty at its heart. Maybe they should have come up with another plan. But the plan that he had was to seal the Dark One away, which they succeeded in doing. But they paid the price for it for generations to come.
And it is a heavy price. And, who knows, now you mentioned that this adorable baby is Luz's baby. And is there any significance to, they didn't have to show this baby. Let's just be honest. They did not have to show this baby. Why did they show the baby in the scene? Is this a famous event that takes place?
I think that, I suspected that the cold open would be the prologue from Died World, from the book. But it wasn't. It was before. So maybe we'll see the prologue played out in another cold open or something like that later on. And then we'll see how he kills his family and his children and his, that whole thing. So maybe they established this earlier, so it will hit harder when it's shown later. I don't know, but so unfortunately that kid will never grow old. He or she, I don't know what gender it was, but will not live so much longer. Unfortunately.
Right. Yeah. Because as you have mentioned earlier, and we've discussed, this is the gentleman, unfortunately, the dragon, who ends up killing his entire family. And it's also the person that the Gleeman is singing about in one of the episodes, isn't it?
Yes. Right. And I won't sing anything now because my voice is crap.
Well, I've never heard you sing, Stubble, so
No, I've spared you the pain and the suffering.
Well, I somehow don't think it's that bad, but it would be very interesting to hear you sing some tunes, some Gleeman tunes, if you wish. Please feel free to indulge us at any time.
I'm unfortunately will say that will never happen.
Well, so far, this is really fantastic to get this glimpse. And you were right, Stubble. When I saw how advanced that world was, when you look outside of the window, I wanted to see more of that world. I really wanted to see what technology and what advancements they had made. And it clearly was an advanced civilization. And Latra mentions that if things don't work out, it will set them back 1,000 years or something like that. And we do see that the world has been set back. And this is what Moiraine was kind of alluding to, more or less, about how...
yeah, but that was a bit weird for me, because how would she know that exactly what would happen? Maybe she would have misconception, or not misconception, but thoughts about what might happen. But she seems very sure that all the bad things that happen would happen. So that was a bit weird for me. But yeah, but I mean, when you compress everything like you have to do, then you have to be a bit obvious sometimes in a TV series like this. You can't be as subtle as in a long book series.
Well, I'm also kind of curious about the fact that we have heard in this series from Moiraine and Suan discussing how they were present during when someone had a vision.
Yeah.
And I wonder if somebody like Shin, or someone, like one of their sisters, had a vision about what might happen, and perhaps that kind of tipped Latra off to what the future may hold if they go in a certain direction.
Yeah, that might have been it. That might have been the case, but that's something. If that happened, I'm not aware of it, so to speak. And you say Chin, but I think her name is Min.
Min. I'm really messing her name up, aren't I?
No, it's okay, but just so for reference, so people know who you're talking about.
Yes, the Seer, who is also more or less someone who's very important in the story. And I'm going to get to that in a second, because and I hope I'm getting this part correct. There's a lot that goes on.
It was a very busy episode. I think there were a lot of cuts back and forth, and I think the editing was a bit, what should you call it? It was a bit jumpy or something.
It was very jumpy, and there was, you kind of like have to keep track of what's going on. But we're kind of confronted with a very interesting scene after the flashback of 3,000 years. We're back into the Blight with Moiraine and Rand, and they come across the body of a young man in the Blight, and it looks just terrible. It looks like he's whatever happened to him while he was there, and it looks fairly recent, although he does have mushrooms and things growing on him. It wasn't that long ago. And Moiraine talks about how this happens to young men who feel like they want to challenge the Blight, and then they're way over their head. And I almost wondered whether she was referring to Rand.
You get that. You get that sense that maybe he's over his head, and maybe he will end up like that.
Yeah, and it was a little scary. And Rand didn't have a comeback line this time with, oh, you think you're so hot because you're an Aes Sedai, his snarky remarks. He didn't have a comeback at all. He was like, oh my gosh, this is really happening, and I could die from this.
Yeah, exactly. And I sense, there's been a shift in Rand's personality a bit. He's more taking charge kind of guy now. Earlier he was just following along, and I think it's in some ways reflect the books that he steps up to the plate when called to, but he's also very reluctant to take on. I don't want to spoil things for the future, but just say that he's not enthusiastic about the destiny that awaits him.
I wouldn't be enthusiastic about it either, Stubble. I think I would be very reticent to even engage in this. And it almost feels like he doesn't, I know it didn't happen overnight, but it almost feels like it happened overnight for him and from his perspective. And I think especially since he is from, let's say, raised in the Two Rivers, having such a tranquil life has really kind of turned him off to this adventure, which I think none of them asked for. And he just wasn't prepared for this level of animosity in his life, because there's a lot that he has to contend with. And I think that one of the things that's really bothering him is the idea that this role as the dragon, that he may go insane. I think that's really bothering him. And I think that he doesn't like the thought of that and feels that once that happens to him, it's something that he doesn't want to face. He doesn't want to, be confronted with a situation where,
No.
he goes insane.
Yeah, and he especially doesn't want to hurt his friends. I don't think he cares so much about his own state as the fact that he might, kill his friends, and because that's happened with the other guys that's gone insane. That's more or less many of them have lashed out towards all the people around them. So yeah.
And the remaining people in the party, they're really splitting up, aren't they? It's no longer a party of five. Now it's just Perrin and Nynaeve and
Egwene.
yes, and Egwene, and Matt is off somewhere, so he's not around.
Yeah,
and Perrin,
originally he should have been with Perrin, Nynaeve, and Egwene, but since they had to rewrite this bit, he's not there.
And clearly they understand the risks, and Perrin is very clear about not wanting to die in the Blight. And, I don't blame him. And that's what they were all thinking. I don't want to go out there and die in that. But as Moiraine and Rand see the 7 pillars of Malkier, Rand is shocked that it was, he says it looks like it's been there for 1,000 years. Yeah. And, I think it's very interesting how she says, no, it's only been 40. And the thing that I thought was very interesting was, of course, she's going to be thinking about Lan because she sees the pillars. At least I thought she would be thinking about that. Do you think it was hard for her to leave Lan behind on this journey?
Yeah, I think so. But she doesn't want to, risk his life, because sure, he would be good to guard your back, but she don't think that she'll be coming back. So I don't think she wants to bring him along, and because of that. But who knows? They've changed it from the books. In the books, everyone goes to the end place, but it's almost only Rand that has anything to do. The others are just thrown aside, more or less. So they had the others stay behind to have them have something to do in the episode.
Yeah, and of course, after Lan realizes that Moiraine is gone, he does speak to Nynaeve, who tells him, I have a way to track Moiraine, and I can show you how. I really care about you. Maybe one of these days my fate will be different. I may not be a wisdom anymore, and I might go to Tar Valon to be an Aes Sedai, but I just want to let you know. And I think she's kind of telling him, just in case she doesn't see him again, it's like, I don't know what my life is going to bring me, but I just want to let you know how important you are to me. And it's a very touching moment between the two of them, because he tells her that she's like the most lovely person, in the world to him. And yet she sends him into the Blight.
And that conversation, except for, I found the tell on Moiraine, the whole between Lan and Nynaeve about how she will become something else, and all of that. That's more or less lifted directly from the books. It's one of the famous scenes in the books, but they have it in a slightly different context here. But and I think it's not as impactful in the TV series as it is in the books, but it's a nice exchange, nice line. So yeah, I like it that they found a way to work it into the show as well, but even if it's not as impactful as in the books, in my opinion.
Yeah, it certainly is a touching moment, and it had to be said. He couldn't leave her. I mean, under the premise that he possibly may not return. And although she asked him to make sure that he brings Rand back, in these uncertain times, only God knows what's going to happen when he goes off into the Blight looking for Moiraine, and I guess hopefully retrieving Rand for Nynaeve. And Nynaeve, I get the sense that she would wait for him if she had to, under different circumstances. If she had to go study at Tar Valon at the White Tower for 4 or 5 years, I have a feeling that Lan would wait for her, and they would kind of reunite with one another. But the future feels very uncertain at this point, and it's because we just don't know what's going to happen, more or less, unless you've read the books or have a sense of the story background. And
And even if you read the books, there's they throw a lot of surprises at you. You know, they've changed a lot of things. So, and some things I think they've succeeded in, but a lot of things I think they maybe didn't succeed to 100%. But yeah, but it's still okay. I think it's yeah.
Well, you know, as Rand and Moraine travel deeper into the Blight, you know, unfortunately, we see some circumstances which I believe for Rand is essentially him slipping into the madness. And I don't like to see any situation where he's kind of mentally manipulated. But, you know, I think that, as you had said, Rand is changing. He is finally wising up, because he does question Moraine about her plans. Like, what's the plan?
Yeah.
Maureen, what's the plan? You know, like, and I think that she was surprised to see him ask her this, although at this point, you know, he should be asking many more questions, and probably does, but
she doesn't seem to have the answers, really. She's more or less living on hope. She has like a basic idea what she hopes will happen, but I don't think she has a real plan either about what should be done or how you should do it. She brings that. Maybe we jump ahead here, but
no, you can. No, it's fine. Go ahead.
But she brings that Sangreal, as they call it, and it looks like it's similar to one in the books which is an Angreal. Maybe I should explain Angreal, Sangreal, and
yes, please.
So there are 3 types. So an Angreal, it's when you channel through it, it enhances your power. A Sangreal is a more powerful version of that. It's the same thing. But then there's Terangreal, and we've seen Moraine use one of those in when she, you know, met up with Swan in that steamy moment.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's objects that may require channeling to work, or some doesn't require channeling, but they do stuff. Whilst Angreal and Sangreal just enhances your power. So she gives him this Sangreal later on. So yeah, I don't know where I was going with that, but anyway.
Well, honestly, I found it very fascinating, the Sangreal, because she mentioned that it had the power of 1,000 male Aes Sedai in it. And I'm like, wait a minute. What does she mean by that? Does she mean that, you know, male Aes Sedai took their power and put it into this object, and then they don't have the power anymore? Or
no, it's more like that it took a lot of people to construct this object, and they pour a lot of their power into constructing it, and now, so they are not living inside this thing or anything like that. It's just an object, but it took a lot of effort to create it, and that's what she meant.
It sounds unbelievable, the creation of something like this, and you know, sort of this very, very important magical object, which could be used at a time like this, or, you know, I could see them using something like this to kill, you know, to fight against, you know, any kind of evil, you know, not just the dark one, so to speak, but any other manifestations. And it doesn't look like it's going to do what they said it will. So I think that Rand has to have a lot of faith in Moraine, and he doesn't. Like, he's there, but he's, I think, still a little leery of Moraine.
Yeah, he doesn't trust her 100%. And but I think we skipped one thing.
Yes.
Because he has a dream with you know, the man with the burning eyes, and I'll let's just call him Baal-Samon, because that's what he's known in the books as. And so people think it's the dark one, and maybe it is, maybe it isn't, but let's just call him Baal-Samon. And he has a dream where Baal-Samon kills Moraine, with a, there's a blade through the mouth and that whole thing. And then he shoots him in the face with an arrow, and then the mask comes off, and we get to see uh, uh, my other fellow countryman, Fares as Balsamon without the mask and the scarred face and the whole thing. And what did you think of that burning face dissolving, or how did you think they did that?
I think it looked great, and it was a great representation of something that we can't understand, because after all, this is Rand experiencing this, and they did two things right. The first thing was that the physical representation of this was beautifully done, and you understood what was going on, so there wasn't any confusion. And the second thing that they did that was great as well was that Moiraine has to constantly ask Rand what happened. It's almost as if she's not even there. And this is something that I find incredibly fascinating, in the sense that although she's physically present, she may not be actually like astral present. She's physically present, but she's not able to witness what's going on. And this is something that is really important, I think, for this story, is that, that experience that Rand will have with whatever dark entities approach him cannot necessarily be experienced by those around him. And it's very interesting, because we've had these channelers who, for the most part, have a bond with another person, and therefore what the channeler experiences, the warder experiences. So there's another person there who can understand what's going on. But now we're presented with a situation where a person can be a channeler and no one knows what's happened. It's only Rand who truly knows what occurred. And that level of, it's almost like he's the omniscient one and she's not. He has more information. He has more experience in channeling, and she doesn't. And that sense of where she's kind of left in the dark about things is really, really extraordinarily, well done and obvious in this story. And perhaps I was not prepared to understand or didn't fully get the point of this. It's remarkable. It's almost like the men, or let's say anybody who finds himself in this position as a channeler, has an experience, and we can maybe never know the entire truth. And it is maybe more realistic, because there isn't anybody out there who knows everything, right, Stubble?
No. Right. No, I have no idea what you're thinking right now. Maybe you're thinking, what's that crazy dude doing over there? No. But that's one of the challenges in adapting this, that there's so much internal stuff in because the book is primarily from Rand's point of view, the whole book, more or less, apart from a few chapters. And there's so much internal thoughts in the book, so it's very difficult to translate that to film. And I think they've done at least an okay job with that, I think. But they had to keep Rand in the dark for the first 6.5 episodes, so he was just the guy in the background all the time. So but I think they've done at least an okay job with that.
Well, in regards to the actor who plays this other character, who clearly is a boss of some kind, and Rand has kind of graduated to another level now. He can't run away from what's happening. He's kind of confronting it more. I've seen this actor in another series called Jack Ryan. And he is so charismatic, this man. Like he's incredible. And I'm a big fan of his work.
He's on another level of Moiraine and Rand here, with the channeling, and you know that they are not playing in the same league when it comes to that. He's so above them. And the actor is great, and he was in Chernobyl as well. I don't know. You saw Chernobyl, right?
There's a few. You mean the miniseries from HBO?
Yeah.
Chernobyl. I'm trying to think of what part he played in that. I mean, there
He
were so many great
he played
performances.
the older soldier who helped kill off the pets.
Oh yes, yes, and they wore like these aluminum foil.
Yeah, lead things around their junk.
Yeah, no, that's a good idea. That's a
Yeah,
really good idea what they did.
yeah,
I was unaware that was his part in it. That was one of the best miniseries I've ever seen, and
yeah,
you know, I think if anything, that miniseries showed what they were up against. It
yeah,
wasn't just Chernobyl; it was
yeah.
the
Right.
the bureaucracy of it all, right? But he's such a great actor. And I think they needed someone of his
Yeah,
caliber to bring it to that other level because, as you said, this isn't ordinary channeling.
yeah,
And this entity, it almost makes me think that the entity that they're fighting, or the entities that they're fighting, the Dark One or the Dark Legions, are perhaps very misunderstood by the Aes Sedai. Am I wrong in saying that?
well, you could say that I said I think they know everything, and they know a lot, but there's a lot of things that they don't know, which they think they know. So, they're convinced of the truth, but maybe it's not the truth, so to speak. And it's the same thing that they can't tell a lie, but the truth they're saying maybe isn't the truth, just what they think is the truth. So there's a lot of that going on as well.
Yes, and you know, we have seen Moraine and perhaps some of the other Aes Sedai fall into that trap of believing that they know everything, and of course, you know, they could be doing things that are irreversible and may work against them in the future. But you know, this was really a wake up call, I think, for Rand. He's had some other, you know, close encounters, but this perhaps might be the closest encounter that he's ever had.
Yeah,
And I think that terrified him. And I think that he purposefully doesn't tell Moraine about it because he thinks that she won't believe him.
yeah,
Um, and I can understand that. Like it was, yeah, I had a dream that you got stabbed by what appears to be the Dark One, or what I think might be the Dark One. I think Moraine would probably just say, okay. And what else happened?
yeah, yeah. But in the scene, we know where he pushes the arrow in and all of that. He calls Rand. We call him Balsamon. He calls Rand Luciferian, and he calls in that constant all
Oh,
the
does he
times.
call him loose?
Yeah, he calls him that all the time.
So this is
Uh,
something that I do want to ask you about, Subtle, and I guess that this is what you're about to tell me. Um, is it a reincarnated individual? Is the dragon a reincarnated individual?
the soul is reincarnated, so it's the same. It's the same person in a new body, so to speak.
Wow. So presumably Rand, physical Rand, has all of the dragons inside of him. These experiences, but
Yeah,
he was unaware that this is what was um, inside of him, I guess, or something like that.
yeah. We've had a few instances where he had some vision, I remember this mountain, when he sees the mountain, and we have in this, when they get to the down into the pit where this symbol is on the ground, he has this vision of Luciferian being there earlier, and I guess it's a vision of his earlier life or something like that. But so yeah, so it doesn't mean that he has all the knowledge or everything. It's just that it's the same soul that's reborn, and sometimes maybe some memories come through or something like that. But it's not like, oh, I woke up again and now I'm here a couple of thousand years later. No, it's a new person, but it's the same soul.
Yeah, it's very interesting. And I think that, you know, when Rand realizes that this is, you know, what's going on, and I think he kind of does in this episode when he talks about as you said, where he was near the White Tower or the mountain, where he said he'd been there before. I think that he's going to have a lot of deja vu moments going forward, and realizing that this thing is a hell of a lot bigger than what he could have imagined. And there would have been no way that Moiraine could have explained this to him, several months earlier. He just wouldn't have been able to grasp what was going on.
And maybe she doesn't know either. Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And I think that's very interesting. Perhaps the male channelers have a deeper connection with the One Power, and or have a different connection that explains other elements of the One Power that the female Aes Sedai may not have access to, which is also very interesting. And I think it may not be true, but
I wouldn't say that they have a different kind of, because there are two different sources. It's a male and a female half of the One Power, so there are differences between them, but I don't think there's anyone is more connected or anything like that. But the show can maybe change some of that. I don't know, but we'll see. We'll have both of us have to watch and find out.
Yes, and then of course they talk about Rand and Moiraine talk about Egwene, and how perhaps they thought that she might have been the dragon. And my question is, why didn't they think Nynaeve was the dragon, concerning how powerful Nynaeve was?
Well, I think it was that they had this vision 20 years earlier, where an Aes Sedai had a vision of the dragon being born at that instant. And
her age,
Nynaeve is a few years older, so she but when she did that big thing in the end of episode 4, maybe Moiraine thought, well, perhaps maybe there's something wrong with the age or something like that. But I don't think she really considered Nynaeve because of her age. She was 5-6 years older than what the vision showed.
And why can't Nynaeve hear the wind anymore after she channeled that first time, and Egwene seems to be able to do it? Why? What do you
I have no idea. I have no idea. That's something for the show. That's not something taken from the books at all. I don't know why.
And also, was Moiraine hazed by the Aes Sedai?
That's something that's not mentioned in the books in any way. But it's like in the books, Nynaeve has a block that's so she can't channel whenever she wants. She has to be very angry. And
you mentioned this.
Yeah, and they try to get rid of her block. With that included like beatings and other stuff. But I never heard that Moiraine had the same thing. But maybe they just incorporate that, and maybe Nynaeve won't have the block in the same way. I don't know how the show is going to do it, but it's not nothing from the books that's connected to Moiraine. Maybe it was just. I don't think it's something that we will get back to when it comes to Moiraine, I think. But we'll see. It's just as new to me as it is to you. So.
And we also see that as Nynaeve, Egwene, and Perrin are at a sort of like a turning point now of what's going to happen. There's an army heading towards them of Trollocs. And in this huge amount of shuffling and trying to figure out what's going on, the Seer sees what will happen to Nynaeve and Egwene and many of the soldiers, and is taken aback by this. And they said, "Oh, they know she saw something," and you can hear like a horn kind of saying, "Hey, even Rand and Moiraine in the Blight can see the dark armies coming." As they're marching on the city. And the Lord and his sister, she's very concerned, because she says, I know you guys are going to this gap in the strategic gap where you fight, but it's not going to hold. This is very dangerous. And it's when we realize at that point that the Lord knows that he's not going to make it back.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, I wasn't expecting him to say that. But it's very touching. I mean, he's this fantastic. He's got this amazing armor, and he's very stoic. And to hear him say, this is probably a one-way trip. But
Yeah.
but he asked his sister to defend the city, and this is going to be very exciting, I think, for anyone who is unaware um, or can even imagine how these women will defend the city. She calls for people who can channel.
Yeah.
And this could be like the boss fight, right? Or
Yeah.
it feels like a boss fight because she's asking for people to channel, and this is really the first time I've seen something like this, or at least what they're setting up. But at the same time, Rand and Moraine find themselves what looks like, I guess, is the eye of the world. Is this the eye of the world, Stubble?
Well, they've done the Eye of the World a bit different than the books. In the books, the Eye of the World, spoilers for anyone that's going to read the first book, but the Eye of the World is a pool of Sidene, of the male half of the one power that's not tainted with the Dark One's touch, and there's a struggle of getting access to it, you could say, and there's a fight involved with that, and let's just say that the book ending is a bit confusing. And one of the reasons for that there's several reasons. One of the reasons was that he hadn't the metaphysics 100% worked out when the first book came out, and there was also, it's told from Rand's point of view, and he doesn't really know what he's doing. So it's not until you reach book 4 that you can go back and see, oh, that was what they did, and that was what they did. So it's a bit confusing in the first book. So I knew they had to change things around a bit there to make it more, so the audience would get kind of what happened. So the Eye of the World is changed to being, I think it's the platform that's the Eye of the World, the yin yang type symbols, of the Sidene Sidar. And I think that they think that it's the place for the Dark One's prison. That's what Swan said in episode 6. I think she was deceived by, his Balsman, the guy, the bad guy in this episode. So I think this platform that they're on is their version of one of the seals on the Dark One's prison. Because in the books, the seals are like hand-sized, so they can carry them around. This is like, a big thing. So I think it's a place for one of the seals of the Dark One's prison, and I think they were deceived to go there to break it.
Oh, wow. That is so cool. That is really cool. Um, and so, while they are at this place that they think is the eye of the world, but it's actually this other location, as you mentioned, or possibly another location, Rand does experience, that he's kind of tempted by the Dark One, if you will, tempted.
Yeah.
As he sees his life in the two rivers.
Every hero must be tempted by the dark side at some point in a fantasy or sci-fi story. That's part of the playbook.
Yes.
Yeah.
And he certainly is here. And it's not sort of salacious or anything. It's him with Egwene and their child. Yeah. And we happen to know
what he always wanted, a simple life with his family and, with his girl and a child, and, just living life. That's what he wants.
And what's great about this is that this is exactly what the Seer prophesied, that we would see Rand with a child, and here it is.
Yeah, I suppose that's the thing. We don't. Maybe they will do something else with the child later on, but I guess this is it. Yeah.
Well, I really liked it because it is what she saw.
Yeah.
And, clearly that's what happened. There is no speculation about it. That's what happened in the vision. And it looks very real from what we saw. And whether it works out for him or not, that it becomes reality or fantasy, that's what she saw. And, I think it was reliable. one reliable thing that we saw predicted by her that he would she could see him with a child. And so,
Yeah.
that might be one of his desires, one of the things that he wants to start a family. And, that's why she could see that.
Yeah.
And another very interesting part of it too is, and I do really have to get your opinion on this. While all of this is transpiring, Rand is somewhat unconscious and Moraine is kind of hovering over him, and she can see the same character there
Yeah.
in what she believes to be the eye of the world. And I have to ask this question, and I guess I should have known or assumed that this is possible. Does this character gentle Moraine?
Well, that's the question, isn't it? And for women, it's not called gentling; it's called stealing, but it's the same thing. Either he does that, or he puts a shield on her and ties it off. You can tie off a thing, so like almost you tie a rope, kind of. So either he steals her, or she gets a shield that's tied off so complicated and hard and impossible to undo that she's more or less still unless she gets help. So I don't know which one of them. That's what's the case for that. But the showrunner came out and said why he because that's not in the books. She gets injured in the books, but she doesn't lose her power or anything like that. But he said that the reason that they did that was because there's not much for Moraine to do in the second season. In the second book, she's off screen, except for one short chapter, more or less. And when it comes to television, Daniel Henney and Rosamund Pike are the two headliners of the show, so they can't sit on the sidelines for the whole season. So they had to come up with something for her to do in the second season. So her story arc in the second season is probably to get her power back or something like that. And we'll see where they take it. But that's the reason why they did that, because they couldn't have her be sidelined for the whole season. So she had to have a story arc there.
And I found that incredibly interesting and fascinating, because now she's it's almost like she's defenseless now.
Yeah.
And she has a knife to Rand's neck. And all the while he's at a point where it looks like he might go with Ishmael's wishes, so to speak.
Yeah.
But then he rejects it because he knows deep down that Egwene wants to be an Aes Sedai. So this is not the life that she wants. This is the life that he wants.
Yeah.
And so,
and he doesn't want to live a fantasy world. He wants to live with her on her own terms. He doesn't want like a robotic version of her doing what he wants all the time. He wants the real person.
Doesn't.
No. So yeah, he rejects it and uses the Sangreal to more or less obliterate what he thinks is the Dark One. But when he disappears, you see that there's a smile on his face. So I think it went all according to plan, because you see that the seal is cracked afterwards, and that was probably his plan all along, I guess.
Yeah, it's clearly a misjudgment of things, because even Moraine herself is very startled by these broken pieces on the ground. And supposedly what happened should never have happened. But remember, as we remember, Rand has one of the most powerful sangreals out there, and I guess it could do anything if used in a certain way. And clearly that's what happened here. The power was misdirected, not perhaps towards the Dark One, but towards the seal.
Yeah. And there are like 4 or 5 sangreals in the series, but they are usually a bit bigger. They wouldn't fit you so you could hide it in your hand, or they're usually like a feet or so in size, or maybe bigger. So yeah, we'll see if
They're not
they'll
easily
become.
concealable.
No. There's well, we don't have to go into that, but yeah. So we'll see what they do in the TV show. I can tell you that the TV show is not the books, and the books are not the TV show, but there
Right.
are elements that that overlap and so on. So, even if you to anyone you're watching this, if you, I encourage you to read the books as well, even if you like the show and so on. But
And we
yeah.
will continue the book series after this episode. We are going to continue to go through the entire series of books.
you have work to do then.
Yes, I do have work to do. And the series came upon us, and I'm grateful for it. But I do want to finish book 1, and we haven't even scratched the surface of that. So, for those of you listening, we are going to continue the book review series on the Wheel of Time. So, you certainly want to stick around for that. But you're right. There are changes which we were expecting, and I think that was inevitable. And we also noticed that this Trolloc army has pretty much defeated some of the male fighters, and now the only defense.
And I must say that they look awful in not a good way. The
Yeah.
CGI is not good, and because they had prepared a lot of things for episode 7 and 8 that they couldn't use, but they already spent the money. They had prepared because they built the blight in studio and on some backlot or something, but they had prepared to go abroad to a forest that looked spooky and in all the right ways and shoot there, but they could because of COVID restrictions. And with the Trollocs, they had planned to use as they did in episode 1, people in suits, and then enhance them with some CGI when needed. But they couldn't do that. So, and they had spent a lot of money on, this is what we're going, all the pre-production stuff for, all this stuff was out the window. So they had to scramble and come up with new stuff. And I mean, it shows in the quality. It's not great when it comes to the Trollocs and the fight. That's one of the on the low marks of this episode for me.
I agree with you. It clearly looks very CGI generated, and it's not the quality that we were hoping for. And it's a lot of Trollocs, and unfortunately, they have, sort of breached that barrier that's between these two mountains. And we see that all the while, Nynaeve, Egwene, and the Lord's sister, whose name I can't remember, is there, plus two other women.
Amalisa.
Amalisa is there, along with 2 other channelers.
Yeah.
And you can see them linking. And something that I thought was very interesting is that Amalisa is not an Aes Sedai. She's a channeler.
Yeah.
But she's not an Aes Sedai. And it seems like she's kind of like forming these links or doing, she trained for 5 years in the tower. But I find it very interesting that she is kind of leading them. Perhaps she is the most well-trained individual there at that moment.
Yeah.
But I was very curious about this. Clearly, as a channeler, she knew what to do. She says, let me in and let me link with you. And that happens. And we see some extraordinary use of the One Power.
Yeah. The linking part is in the books. It's described to be more difficult to, it's not as simple as it seems to be in the TV show. But they can't do everything. So she gets the others power. So she becomes much more powerful than she would be on her own. And she uses it to good effect on the invading armies. But we can see that maybe she wasn't disciplined enough, because when you hold on to the power, it's like it's like a drug in a way. in part it gets addictive, but it's also that you want to draw more and more and more. And if you don't have the discipline for it, you can burn yourself out. And burn yourself out looks very different than what's in the book. In the books, it's more or less that you sever your connection to the one power, but you don't die from it directly.
Well,
Whereas
people fell here.
here they were burned to a crisp, more or less.
Yeah. That's exactly how I would describe it. And it looks serious. Like they all were down for the count. And Nynaeve seems to kind of pull some of the power from Egwene to spare her this horrible death. It looks terrible, but they have defeated the Trollocs. Like those Trollocs were wiped out super easy, which I found pretty cool. I've never seen, this is the first time I've seen something like this in battle depicted in live action in the series, and it looks amazing. I could imagine in my mind, the green, Aja coming together to do something like this, because that's what the green Aja would do, right, Stubble?
Yeah, they are the battle Aja, and in the books it's Rand that goes into the battle. He more or less teleports there, more or less. I'm oversimplifying it. But he's more or less teleports to the battlefield, and he has connected to this pool of Sidene that's pure, and he can pull in a lot of it. And he more or less wrecks shop there with the army. But they transferred that action to Amalisa and the 4 other women. I guess otherwise they just sit in a room somewhere and don't do anything. So they had to make them do something, I guess. Mm-hmm. So, but as we said, Amalisa doesn't really have the discipline for handling the power on that level, and she's burned to a crisp. And Nynaeve seems to die as well, but later on it seems that she didn't really.
It's pretty remarkable, isn't it?
Yeah, and the plots said so or something.
Well, it seems like Egwene might be on her way to becoming a really good yellow Aja, yellow Aes Sedai, with her healing powers here.
Well, that's one big change from the books, because in the books Egwene is rubbish at healing. She's good at a lot of other stuff, but healing she's really rubbish at. But maybe they'll change that for the TV show.
Yes, and then we also see sort of in the palace, or if you will, a throne room. I'm not quite sure how to describe it. There's something called the Horn of Valyr, and how it needs to be only the dragon can use it. And this I thought was very interesting, because it kind of felt, what was very interesting about this scene was that it kind of felt like the dragon should have been there, even though he was somewhere else.
Yeah, it's said that the Horn of Valyr will be, I don't know exactly the words, but it will be used when the dragon faces off against the Dark One or whatever, and it will call forth the heroes of all ages to help in the fight. And so maybe the dragon doesn't have to blow it, but it will be blown. It needs to be blown for him, so to speak. And they don't know that Rand. They don't know that Rand is the dragon. Those lords that's digging up the horn there. So they're still waiting for the dragon to present himself.
Yes, and while it is true that the ladies were able to ward off these Trollocs, it was at a price. Yeah. And we also see that let's say after the Trollocs have been sort of defeated, and after Rand has fought against Ishmael character, we see that Rand decides that he has to kind of go off on his own.
Yeah.
And I think that at least as far as you can see in the city, which has never fallen before, they seem to kind of fall because someone lets them into the city. Moraine had commented that they didn't know what the name of this place was because dark friends had erased it from their
right.
books of history. And I find that very interesting because is she suggesting that there may be some dark Aes Sedai even in their
Well,
you know,
what do you think?
I hope so.
Let's
I
just
hope
say
there's
that
a cool one.
there are so-called dark friends in all levels of society. So I wouldn't be surprised if a few Aes Sedai also may be serving the Dark One.
I would love that. I think that it's a very interesting twist, and it makes sense. Not everybody is going to be pure and good-willed and
Yeah,
in that
and
direction.
and even if people are not serving, the dark side, so to speak, there are still many are driven by their own motivations, and there are a lot of factions, and there will be a lot of politics, and there will be a lot of all of that stuff. So yeah, but something we didn't mention was when they had dug up the box with the horn.
Yes.
Padan Fane arrives with a
Now,
few fades.
uh, Patton Fane is not the ordinary peddler, is he?
Yes, yes.
He is an ordinary peddler.
No, no, he is the peddler from episode 1, but maybe
Yes.
he's not an ordinary peddler.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So, he's also a very charismatic character.
Yeah, and the
Um,
actor is great.
he is wonderful, and I just love what he does with his explanation to Perrin. And
Yeah.
Perrin, as you mentioned, is taking on some of the burden of Matt's
Yeah.
experiences, but Perrin seems to sort of be witnessing a lot of things that had happened. I mean, he sees everybody killed, including the Ogier, and I felt bad about that. But he also is witnessing Padan Fane taking the Horn of Valyr, and I have a feeling that they need this horn.
Yeah. Do you know the second book? You know what that's called?
No.
The Great Hunt.
Okay.
So maybe they are hunting for something in the second book, and also in the second season.
Wow.
Yeah.
It gets taken by Padan Fane. It's
Yeah.
gone. This horn is gone. And, it feels like a defeat. Although, as I said before, when he mentions that it's supposed to be the dragon that uses it, or maybe he didn't mention, but someone mentioned that it's the dragon that would use the horn.
Yeah.
It did seem like the dragon should have been there at that moment. And I'm not quite sure why I got that feeling, but I just did. And, of course, things seem more dire than ever as we see sort of Rand walk off in the distance through the blight to the unknown, what feels like the unknown.
Yeah, but just to set a capstone on the Padan Fane thing, because in episode 1, he has interaction only with Matt, and Matt sees him or hears him and sees him shadow, and when they in the shadow log off, and I think he sees it somewhere else. But in episode 7, it's Perrin that sees him in the crowd. So Perrin had to pick up the slack that was left from Matt leaving. So I think Perrin was very underserved in the whole season. He never really got to be his own character in some ways, and that's a little. I hope they remedy that in the next season to get more Perrin and more of his character. So, yeah. So that's all I wanted to say on that thing. But
no, because we haven't seen the part where that vision where his blood is dripping from his chin.
Yeah,
we haven't seen that part. So
no. And then you have, because I suspect, because all the visions that we saw her have, Min have in episode 7, they're more or less played out. No, they didn't. The girls haven't played out yet. But maybe it was intended for Perrin to become, the berserker beast type of guy when the Trollocs attacked at Feldar, but he had to cover for Matt's storyline. I don't know what happened, but maybe.
Well, it's the one thing in the vision that we did not see come true, so to speak.
Yeah, and we haven't seen the two women's either. The flame of Tarvalon and the golden ring. We haven't seen those either.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
is true. I thought maybe the part where she talked about how she sees sparks and shadows, and maybe I thought that the sparks and shadows part was when
Yeah.
they linked together, but I'm not sure.
No, I think it was a symbol of they have to work together, otherwise everything will fall more or less. You know, there are more sparks when they're all together, and so it's not just one person, but they have to. Yeah, everyone has a part to play.
Well, Lan finally finds Moraine, who's kind of left alone, and they talk about the
Yeah.
broken uh, seal, as you mentioned.
Yeah.
And then we also see. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No. Yeah, and we see that the seal has been the the symbol on the ground, which made of Quendila, that's a material that's created with the power that's unbreakable. And if the more you hit it with something, the harder it gets and can't be broken. But this is shattered, and it got shattered in the scene where Rand channels at the bad guy. I'm not sure what to call him because I don't
His
want to
name was
spoil things.
I think it said Ishmael in the
Okay, yeah,
description. It said Ishmael.
yeah,
Let me just
so,
look at it. It
yeah,
says his name is Ishmael the man.
yeah. Okay, I'm not going to explain that in any way because I don't want to spoil things for you.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thank you.
but there, yeah. So Lan met Moraine there, and she says that she can't touch the power anymore. And I thought it was a brilliant acting from Rosamund Pike there. I really felt her sadness there.
She seemed lost. She seemed confused.
Yeah.
And she also seemed maybe just broken down.
Yeah.
Like she had energy, there was momentum, she was going, but right now she seems like she's completely out of gas. She has
Yeah.
no more energy for this anymore, and almost like she needs to take a break or step away from this for a while, as you mentioned.
Yeah.
And we also see something that you predicted, Stubble. Your prediction was 100% correct, Stubble.
What do you mean?
You predicted that you thought the series would end with a certain scene.
Yes.
And you were 100% correct.
Yeah. I heard rumors that could be the case, so I predicted that. Yeah, but I must say that I'm excited about what will happen with them, but I didn't like the design really. But maybe that's book me speaking. I thought they were so the armor and everything that people had was so great in the books, but I didn't really feel it in the TV series. But maybe just takes another viewing to get me all the way. We'll see.
Well, honestly, that scene, let's say one of the closing scenes or one of the last scenes that we see, where there are clearly channelers on these ships, and there's a lot of ships, like it's a lot of them, maybe thousands of them for all we know. And the channelers are on the ships and they're channeling their power into the ocean.
Yeah.
And we see one of the biggest tidal waves, like in the history of tidal waves, is poor little girls on the side of the, on the beach playing.
Yeah, I didn't really get why they did that, but I think it was just for introducing the concept and the characters. I don't think it was like an objective to smash the little girl with a huge tidal wave. I think it was just, here are these new characters. Let's see what they can do.
Well, they certainly did something. I mean, it was kind of like they had some kind of thing where they were doing this, and
yeah. I'm not totally sold on all of that thing, but that's just me. So, but I'm excited about what it means for the show with their introduction. So I must ask you, who do you think these people are? Why are they here? I don't think
Well,
you have I don't think you get the answer unless you've looked it up or something. But I
I
would like
haven't
to
looked
hear.
it up. I haven't looked it up. And I also didn't even look to see how they were described in the show. In other words, sometimes it'll say, you know, Group A is here and they are sailing in or whatever. I didn't even look to see a description of who they were.
They are called as Desianchan. Sanchan. Oh, Sanchan.
Okay. And I don't know why they are coming to I guess
No,
flood
I
or
wouldn't.
destroy.
I wouldn't expect anyone to get it unless they know it. But
But
yeah,
it's very dangerous. They're essentially, that tidal wave could like destroy an entire city. It's so big.
yeah,
It kill everybody. I mean, this could be it's a tsunami. They created a tsunami.
yeah. And
Um
and I think that was just for an introduction. Here are the new bad guys, or here are the new guys or girls or whatever. And maybe they are not bad guys. Maybe they are. We'll see.
well, it certainly grabs your attention. You can't forget that scene. You know, it's so jarring and
Yeah,
definitely something that is incredibly fearful. I wouldn't want to be on that beach right now. And I live near a beach. I wouldn't want something like that to happen right now. But there must be something that they're doing. It looks like an invasion to me. Maybe
yeah,
they're answering a call to fight by the Dark One, or maybe they are allies with another group and they're there to fight for that reason. But they're there for a reason.
yeah.
Um,
That's correct.
maybe
They're there for a reason. That's correct.
maybe they could sense that, you know, there are more Dark One armies around and they have to come and either fight against them or join them or something. But it's going to be
Yeah.
interesting to see. Now, Stubble, you mentioned that they are already filming season 2, correct?
Yeah, they started in the summer, so they've been at it for about half a year, and I think they'll film for a few months more to maybe February or March or something like that. I don't know, something like that. But I don't know how long post production will take after that. So maybe we'll wait a year, maybe a little bit more. We'll just have to see.
Well, I certainly have to say that overall, I'm glad I watched this series, but I'm even happier that I read the book before I watched it.
Yeah,
It really was so much better to have that foundation. I'm going to listen to the book again because I purchased the audio for the audio version of the book where Rosamund Pike reads it only came out a few days before the series started. So I had already been listening to another audiobook, but I'm
yeah,
going to listen to the one where she narrates it.
yeah.
And I hope she continues to narrate the rest of the books. I don't know.
But maybe we won't get the next one until the second season, and that's a year from.
But I need to. You and I are going to
But
continue.
the other narrators are great as well. What's his name now? Oh, just because Kate Redding and Michael Whelan. I think I'm not sure. I'm 90% sure.
Well, it was done some time ago, right? Stubble.
Yeah, it was done before the whole craze about audiobooks. It was made for when it was hard of hear. No, for those who couldn't, because eyesight and whatever needed to,
Yes, books on
20,
tape.
20, 30 years ago, there was not the same crave for audiobooks that there are now.
Yeah, it's like books on tape that my mother.
Michael Kramer is his name. I said the wrong thing. So Kate Redding and Michael Kramer, and I think they are great. But you seem to prefer Rosamund Pike. To each their
Well,
own.
he's good too. The guy is okay, but I do like Rosamund Pike reading it because it
That
feels
was,
like the character is reading it. I don't know why I associate that. She plays Moraine, so
yeah.
maybe the next book will be narrated by someone else who I don't know, but I think that
Yeah.
she's done a great job.
If anyone is going to do it from the production, I think it's Rosamund Pike to get a consistency through it all. But I must say that in the second book, in the Michael Kramer, Kate Redding, there's a lot of more by Kate Redding because there are more female points of view than in the first book. So there's still a majority of male POVs, but there are more than in the female than in the first book. And actually, when you get through the whole books, you'll see that the last 3 or 4 books, there's actually more female POVs than male POVs. So,
well, I can't wait to get to it. As I've said before, and to anybody who's listening, Stubble and I are going to continue our Wheel of Time book series, where we're going to be reviewing all the books from the series, or at least as many as I can muster strength to review with you, Stubble. We're going to be talking about stuff that we love in the books. So it's going to be a little different type of review. We're not sort of going to be talking about everything, just stuff that we love in it. And we are also going to do another video that wraps up the entire series. But as I said before, what I want to do is I'm going to binge watch it from episodes 1 to episodes 8. And then we're going to sort of like do a season 1 review of the series, just to kind of
get a little perspective on the whole thing.
Absolutely.
That you don't get on a episode to episode basis.
Yes. And I have to say, Stubble, this has been such an enjoyable review series with you, talking about the Wheel of Time television series. And it's been very exciting. And, I'm so glad I did this review series with you. This, as far as I'm concerned, was a great series. And, it might get even better in the second season. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what they come up with and how the story goes for all the characters. And I just wanted to thank you for being so patient with me in regards to reviewing this series. I know it's been challenging at times, with a lot of things that I was unaware of, but this has been so much fun, and I'm really glad I did it. And I'm looking forward to doing more videos with you, Stubble.
Yeah. Where did this episode fall in the rankings of the episodes so far for you? Is it, you don't have to give an exact, but is it in top or bottom of the 8 episodes?
On the bottom. Middle?
At the bottom. Yeah. For me as well, it's in the bottom 3 for me. Unfortunately, but a lot of the things that I had problems with was linked to production issues. But there was some other things as well that I didn't like. But I would give it maybe a 5 or 6 out of 10 this episode.
Mm-hmm. I agree, and I think it's very important that you did mention that because of the things that are going on in the world with the pandemic, that it made it difficult for them to continue the production, but they still produced an incredible amount of work and enjoyable episodes for us to watch that have that have rewatchability. So although the feel of this last episode, which I think should have been maybe a 2-hour episode. Just like how I think the first episode should have been 2 hours.
Exactly.
We didn't get that, but perhaps in the future series, season 2, we'll get more of that that's needed, or even just enough time to tell the story properly. It doesn't have to have a time stamp on it, but usually the closing episode is a little bit longer, and the pilot too. So we're going to need a lot of explanation for all those ships out there, Stubble.
Yeah, and we'll get a new actor for Matt. It'll be interesting to see how he does it.
Yes, and I look forward to seeing whatever characters they're willing to bring back, so we can kind of get a better understanding of what's going on. And I did want to thank you again for this review, Stubble. Where can people find you?
It's easiest to find me on Twitter at TOMP115.
Okay, excellent. And that is good. Anybody who wants to get in contact with Stubble, please get in contact with him at Twitter. You guys, you can find me here on Positive Fandom. You can also find me the show will resume in January on Midnight Metal on Friday nights at 3 a.m. Eastern, 12 p.m. Pacific. But you can also find me next year when the show resumes on Toxic Femininity on Monday nights with Lorena Creel, and usually every Friday afternoon on Midnight's Edge in the morning with Tom and Andre. So I just want to thank everybody who watched this series as we went through all 8 episodes. Today was the conclusion episode 8 of the Wheel of Time television series. It's been quite a ride. And as I said, we're going to have a recap episode for season 1 where Stubble and I talk about the season in general. And we're also going to be continuing our series of the Wheel of Time's book review, where we're going to be talking about all the things we love about the books and some very interesting things that were not included in the series for season 1. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, Stubble, for joining me on this wonderful review series. And to those of you at home, I hope you all are doing well. And remember, please be kind.